So at this point, again, thank you, Dave Young and Tight Lines Digital. I want to turn this back to the guys from the Caddis Shack, to Chris and Jason. Looking forward to your show.
All right. Thanks, Lance. Thanks, Dave. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the UP, and most of what I know of the UP has come in the past few years. My name's Jason Brownewe. I moved to the UP about 3-4 years ago, and so I'm a transplant. Grew up out west in the Rockies, fly fishing out there. Lived in Chicago for about 20 years, and that's where I met my wife, and she's from the UP. And it was on a trip up to the UP that she hired this guy, to take me out and introduce me to the waters around here. And I don't know if that was her plan to get me to move up here, but it worked. And Chris and I have been fast friends since then, and done a lot of fishing together. And you'll hear just his wealth of knowledge of this area, the fish, all of that. I've learned so much from him over the past 3 years. It's been phenomenal. And my horizons of fishing have grown from trout to steelhead to smallmouth to just about anything that swims. It's just been incredible up here, and we really want to take some time and introduce you guys to it the best we can on this cold winter night, into what goes on up here. And with that, I'll kind of turn it over to Chris, and he can introduce himself.
Hey, y'all. So my name is Chris Gestwicki. Not an easy last name to pronounce. It is Polish. But my wife, I'm a transplant as well, and my wife moved me up here about 21 years ago. After I was in the military, I went to school at Western, and that's where I met my wife. And we started our family, and I moved her out east to where I was, where I had grown up, basically, because as I said, I'm from Kalamazoo, but left at a young age. And took my wife out east, and she wanted to come back home. Home to her was the Upper Peninsula. And now, prior to me coming here, I had been here about a total of 8 hours. So I had no idea what I was moving into. But for a fly fisherman, a trout fisherman, any real type of outdoor enthusiast, this is like being a kid in a candy store. Somebody asked me the other day, how much do you fish, and how much haven't you fished? Well, there are so many rivers and so many tributaries up here that I could spend the next 10 years fishing every single day and not touch all the water that this place has to offer. So you have still, it's one of the last wildernesses up here. And as we get into this, you'll see all the opportunities that you can get into for somebody who wants to get into some fly fishing or whatever it is they want to do up here.
All right, well, let's dive in. All right, you heard about these two guys. So let's get into the meat of things here. And what we want to do today is we're gonna talk about 5 trips, really 5 seasons, and they're really kind of the prime fishing times for us up here. We're going to cover everything from spring all the way into winter, and some of the things that go on up here, and everything from trout to smallmouth to steelhead, you name it. And as we're going along, use the chat window. And Dave, if you see some good questions coming up, I'll let you just kind of interject, and we'll do our best to answer a few as we go along. That's fine. And then I think we'll have plenty of time at the end to do some Q&A as well. Listen, we're going to do our best to help you understand the area up here and the fishing up here. In a way, we're going to be kind of your maitre d's, and we're going to present the menu to you. We're not going to be drawing X's and arrows on maps and pinpointing areas. We're going to stay away from that where we can. We will talk about some of the more known rivers and the waters, that you can find easily online and learn about, and that have been written about in books. We're going to talk about those, but there's going to be some waters that we're going to be quieter about, and be a bit more protective about. But listen, we're happy to share information. And if you're trying to plan a trip up here and you want to do it yourself, by all means, reach out to us. And if you reach out to us by email or instant message on Facebook, however, we're happy to share information, but we're not going to use this forum to really go wild with the different waters in the area here. But we are going to try to help you out and kind of understand what's up here, okay? So with that said, let's dive in. As Chris mentioned, we are blessed with a lot of water. We've got thousands of miles of shoreland, inland lakes, rivers, and streams. It is truly a fishing paradise during the 4 months that it's not winter up here. And we've been really lucky the past couple months. This has been a mild winter and we've gotten a lot of fishing time in, but I don't know, the past couple of years we were dealing with 4 foot of snow out there, and it just, there was no fishing in the winter or even the late fall. So it really depends. And but those 4 months that we've got summer, it's amazing. It is really amazing. And the activity, the wildlife, the beauty, really incredible. And we'll share a lot of pictures with you. But I think a lot of people, when they think of the UP, they think of little tea-stained rivers back in the woods, and they think brook trout. And that's true. That is so true of this area. And, you know, that they've probably even read a little bit of Ernest Hemingway's take on it. And I think that's a picture a lot of people have in their minds. And it's a good one. But I think the reality of looks more like this, where there's a lot of bushwhacking. Our state bird, the mosquito, takes over and protects every inch of that water out there. And you can wind up feeling more like Bear Grylls surviving out there in this wilderness than Ernest Hemingway. And I think what we want to try to do here is, if you want the Bear Grylls experience, come on up. It's there for you. If you want the more sublime Ernest Hemingway, we'd say hire a guide on your first time up here and get to know the area. We've got 3 kind of regions up here that we look at. There's a lot of water up here, but the 3 main kind of outfitters and guides in the area are us, Caddis Shack in the lower central area there. You've got Dark Waters over in the western side, and Rivers North and Superior up in the Marquette area. And there's a lot of water in this area, and we're primarily today going to take you through the south central region and what we have in the area around Escanaba, and give you a feel for that. So let's dig in. Chris, why don't you kick us off with this one? So we're starting to think about this one. This one's getting.
So actually today you see, you know, the coming of spring, the spring thaw, and I actually, before this, I just got some new, I'm a big, my big thing is two-handed fly fishing. So Jason and I both bring a great dynamic to this whole guide service thing. I'm a two-handed guy. I love to swing a fly. Jason loves to nymph. I mean, we've got 2 dynamic types of fishing with 2 totally different personalities. I can throw my hands on a nymphing rod and do it with ease, but the swing thing is my game. He can grab a two-handed rod, but the nymph game is his thing. We both do them both. We just really like certain aspects of it, and that's what we do. So right before we started doing this, I was actually lining up some new Skagit lines that I just got, thinking about smallmouth and steelhead. And very shortly, the Upper Peninsula, we're going to feel a thaw, and it comes pretty quick. And the way I see it, we're about 3 weeks out till our rivers start busting open. And things up here can really go quick because the fish know in and out. I have a limited time frame. Things go fast. The birds come quick. The trees pop open quick. It's a harsh lifestyle up here for all practical purposes. So what you have that's going to start our season off is going to be steelhead and smallmouth fishing. And several of the rivers that we fish offer both of those side by side. It's amazing to see. You'll see a gravel bar or a pool, and there will be 5-pound smallmouth with a total torpedo sitting right next to them. Just totally blow you away. And the smallmouth fishing and the steelhead fishing, I personally do both on swing. Jason, to take it to the other level, will nymph a big zertle bug or a big woolly bug or rubber leg woolly bugger through a run, and he's picking up both steelhead and smallmouth. So we have that coming to us right now. And we typically, once the rivers break open, so hopefully in March, the rivers will start breaking open. We need to get some water temperatures climbing. But the spring smallmouth and steelhead will actually run well into May and possibly even June, depending on water levels and water temperatures. So this can go all the way in and start overlapping with our trout season, which makes it really cool because you could walk out in the morning. I'm going to go swing some flies or nymph up some steelhead, play around with some smallmouth, and then make it out in the evening for a great dry fly hatch fishing big trout on the Escanaba River. So the springtime really brings together several opportunities.
Yep. It's the smallmouth fishing blew me away. I mean, I think we all in the Great Lakes know about the steelhead, and we've had great opportunities to get out and chase those fish. But when they stack up next to smallmouth in the same water, and these are not tiny smallmouth. These are some big, healthy trophy size fish that we're talking about. The size amazes me every year that we get pushing up in these rivers. It's ridiculous. And the first time Chris took me out for smallmouth, I asked him, what do we fish with? What do we do? He's just, I don't know, tie something on there and throw it out there. They're going to attack it. And it was pretty true. I still remember working a little pool, making a quick cast out there, and literally my first cast, and I start stripping this bug through there. And I had 3 fish come up and fight over that fly. And I was like, what in the heck is this all about? It was nuts. And it's always been that way. We just get this crazy rush of fish in the spring, pre-spawn, and they are aggressive, and there's a lot of them that push in. And it's partially because we have the beta knock out there, which is a phenomenal walleye fishery, but it's also a phenomenal bass fishery that doesn't probably get the rep it deserves because everybody's focusing on the walleye, but that's fine by us. When spring rolls around and these fish push in, it's a blast.
You're going to see, and at the end of the day, I like to tell everybody it's called fishing, not catching, but double-digit days, a bag mixed with smallmouth and steelhead, and seeing smallmouth 18 to 22 inches, they're not uncommon. They're extremely common.
Yeah.
So to hit these just big, thick, powerful fish is an absolute ride. I get off the river when I can get a day for myself. I'll go for a float or a walk because the woods are just phenomenal as well. And you get to the point literally where your arms are tired and you've been casting 7 weights, 8 weights with sinking tips, or throwing a 7-weight switch rod and swinging long lines.
Yeah.
And days where you're just like, wow, it really is unbeatable. I mean, you can't beat it with a stick.
I think it's amazing fishing, and I don't know that anywhere that can replicate it. It's just hard to time. It is, we're lucky because we can zip over there and keep an eye on the water. But if you went to try to mark your calendar for when it's going to happen, there's just this moving window, and it depends on the water temperature and the flood, just all those factors come in. steelhead are kind of hard to time, and you can miss the ideal window. But when you're timing both of these fish together, it seems like there's a week or two that they're both just on, and it can be tricky to get that week.
And I don't want to jump into trout fishing. We'll get to that, but to give you an example of what's going on, I have literally hit the river in the morning with 2 to 3 inches of snow on the ground, and in the afternoon in a t-shirt fishing Hendrickson's.
Yeah.
That's how fast it can change up here and go from cold to, oh my gosh. And so that's what we're dealing with when we're trying to target the prime times for these fish. And that's where between the two of us spending 300 plus days a year on the water, between the two of us comes in. One of us is always out there. If I'm not, Jason's out there and he says, hey, I hit fish today. All right,
It's on. It's on. What I would suggest is if you have some flexibility in your schedule and you're a 4 or 5 hour drive away, give us a call, give us a ring. We'll keep you in the loop. And when we say it's on, and man, you could be up here that night and we could be fishing in the morning. So it's worth trying to hit. It's really really unique experience. Like Chris mentioned, we pull out the big rods for these guys. I think you just go with your steelhead gear and you get out there and you fish for the steelhead, and you're going to wind up picking up the smallmouth with them.
It's an example of that. I like fast action rods. So I've got some fast 6s that I like to say can double duty as smallmouth rods. And I've hooked just ripping streamers, angry, rip, and tore into steelhead. Well, you put a 10, 12 pound steelhead that's fresh out of the lake on a 6-weight rod, all he does is twist you. Yeah. And you just hold on until he does his thing. So definitely using 7 and 8-weight rods, primarily when the fish are overlapping together. I may go back to a 6-weight come June and I'm pulling poppers through the surface for smallmouth only. But when there's a mixed bag opportunity, you want to be ready for whatever you hook.
Yeah. I'll back up here a second. I keep it pretty simple. That picture down in the bottom right, man, I just grab some ugly buggers and I just throw those guys around there. And telling you what, that was a smallmouth that bent that hook open. There's just some big fish that come up in here, and I'll find that if the stripping game and the fast moving game isn't working for these fish, sometimes I'll just take and dead drift that bugger and I'll just work them real slow through those deep holes. And I find I pick up the steelhead that way, but I also pick up those smallmouth. Sometimes they just want that slower presentation. They're hunkering down for some reason, and working that through the deep, we'll just pull them out. But good stuff. All right, we got a lot to cover. Let's keep rolling.
Hey guys, a quick question came in. In the winter, where do you think these smallmouth hang out?
Out in the lake.
Yeah, they boogie in, they boogie out. We do have some holdovers, but I would say the majority.
We've got a couple of rivers that we really like, and one river is locked in by multiple dams, so those fish will stay in the river system. But one of our other favorite rivers, they boogie out, and come late June, early July, the lower river is still good because the lake levels have come up so high up here that the fish aren't totally retreating out of the river system, but everything is held in the bottom of the river system. Yeah. The upper river gets thin, it gets hot, so they push out. So in the wintertime, they're out in the big lake, and the other fish in the other body of water, they go back down into the impoundments and they just hang out. And then they come in and feed.
And there's those smallmouth during the summer, during the latter part of the summer, going out with poppers and working the top water. That's a blast. We've got plenty of, I guess, traditional smallmouth water around us, which is really fortunate. But this spring run's something special. Anything else, Dave? Any other chat questions?
Yeah, maybe a couple quick ones, not to get you guys distracted. Richard Flegel asks, what leaders do you use? Do you hand tie fluorocarbon leaders or
You know what?
Anything in particular? Or?
And Jason could chime in, but again, a lot of what I do is done on a swung fly, and I always have enough water that I'm at least fishing an intermediate head. So I'm putting as much as I can underwater. And when I'm doing that, I'm going with a 12 or 15 pound, about 2.5 to 3 feet on at least an intermediate all the way down to a T14, swinging for steelhead and for smallmouth. So really my leader stuff is nothing special.
Yeah.
Once I move over to poppers, in nighttime, I'll go out 10 feet long with, 8-pound test, 10-pound test on the end and just rip them. So it totally depends on the application. If I'm down under the water, short, stout leader, I want something that I can just drill, that I can set that hook.
Yeah.
And I'm not worried about it. And at nighttime, again, I'm still only going down to 8 to 10. These fish are vicious, and they see that big popper in the evening going through. They're not line shy then either.
Not at all.
So
yeah,
neither fish. Now I will say, well, I'll let Jason answer this because he's the nympher, so he can tell you about nymphing for the steelhead and what he does, because he's got a whole special system that he does.
I think on mine, I mean, I'm rigging probably a traditional 3X, 9-foot 3X leader that I will cut back about 2 feet. And then from there, I'll probably go with like an 8-pound for about 2 feet to replace that. I want to kind of bulk up that head so I can put a little bit of weight on there. And then I'll add another bit, which will be kind of the money part, which will be just maybe some 3X. And that's if they're getting leader shy, but they rarely are in the spring. In the spring, I'd probably go 2X all the way towards the end, because these fish, they'll rip you. I mean, you saw the hook on that one. They will tear you up, and even those smallmouth will. So 2X is about as light as I'll go. 3X maybe towards the tail end of things. If they're starting to get shy about all the fishing pressure or anything like that, I'll go down. But rarely are these fish leader shy. And I've even used like the dark kind of chameleon 15-pound stuff. It's kind of the brownish color that matches the brownish color of the water for the smallmouth. And they don't notice that. In fact, even the steelhead don't even notice it. So sometimes I'll just tie on some rope so that I'm not breaking off.
The smallmouth, very seldom have I ever actually witnessed a fish shy away being leader shy. The steelhead, you're going to see that more, especially as you progress into the spring. Water starts dropping, water levels start dropping, clarity starts bouncing up. They've been pressured beyond belief. They start getting line shy, and I've gone down to 3 and 4X, and it's kind of a lost cause because once you hook them, they're going to break off anyway. It's just getting too small. And my opinion with going that light, you can't fight the fish effectively and get them in. And I'm all about a quick in, quick release. So it's to go 4X, even 3X, and Jason will use 3X, but he's also using a switch rod.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of play in that rod. So it protects the tippet a bit where he can still get the fish in pretty quick.
Yeah. Yep. But I wouldn't go much lighter than 3X. Going below that's tough. Yeah.
Yeah. So really related to this, and you guys can answer this kind of throughout, is the color of the water in the UP is often a little bit darker due to tannin, right?
Root beer.
Yeah, root beer. Sure.
Hey,
I think from folks in the lower Michigan maybe are thrown off by that a little bit. It's a little different than what they're used to seeing. And so any thoughts on that, if that affects anything? Or
my personal opinion, I think I'm a big fan of color. Okay. You'll have some people out there who say color doesn't matter. I'm a big fan of color. I've had what I like to call proven color episodes where the same fly, but in a different color, has worked versus not working. So what I see really, really works well up here, in my opinion, is yellows with that tannis water. dark browns, coppers, things of blacks, things of that nature, because our water, I'll bet you, oh gosh, 75% of it is draining out of a cedar swamp somewhere. That's where we pick up all our color from. There are a few that aren't that color, but most of it is. So yeah, I do think it does have an effect, and I do believe that certain colors work better. Again, yellows, golds, coppers, greens, olives. A lot of what I do is tied to that
brownish, greenish
like
hue. It's true. I think, the water threw me off when I was used to the freestone, Rocky Mountain, clear streams. And so the color's always thrown me off. And the way I've had to really adapt is, one, I got to remember it's stained. It's not murky. Those fish can see. It is very clear. It just has a tint to it. And so you can't think that you're invisible to the fish because that water's got a color. You still got to practice stealth. You still got to work your way up on fish. The other thing is I had to change the lens colors on my glasses if I really did want to be able to see more of the structure. It's still hard to see the structure.
Absolutely.
I think we're reading more of the hydros than we are able to see down in and see the buckets and the holding water. But I tend towards a bronze or a brown lens. That tends to help me a lot more pick up what depth is there. For some reason, that creates a bit more contrast on the rock and the water underneath. But it's hard to see anything more than a couple, even on the clearest days. If you're seeing more than 3 or 4 feet deep, you're lucky.
And to just take that, a little bit more, the one river, and I definitely want to say this again, if you guys reach out, we're not going to hotspot rivers, but if you, excuse me, reach out, I have no problem giving information anytime. I have a pretty strong social media presence, and I put a lot of pictures up. But the one river that we'll name, the Escanaba River, in talking about what Jason was just saying, where the fish still see you, in a lower portion of that river, I call it the PhD water, where your casts have to be perfect, leaders have to be long, just perfect drifts. I have seen where you think it's dark, murky water. I have seen trout post under a fly and go with the current and just do a straight up refusal. So even though you think it's dark, trust me, I promise you, these fish can see everything that's going on.
They really can. Well, let's dig in. Let's dig into the trout water a bit. This is, like we're talking about, we're going to primarily be talking about the Escanaba, but it's a big body of water, and this holds true for probably most of the other trout water in the region, what we're going to kind of talk about in terms of timing and hatches and things like that. But once June rolls around, like we mentioned, it is an explosion up here of growth, of bug life, of everything. And the thaw happens fast, the growth happens fast, and these fish are just ready to go because they know it is a very compressed time window that they have to feed, to eat, to take advantage of about what's to occur. And we definitely have a lot of activity. So this is going on. We still got some smallmouth and some steelhead around. I mean, there's a window here where there's a lot of fishing activity going on. And I think it's worth mentioning, we start to get some really awesome daylight hours. It gets light early in the morning up here. We're far north and we're on the edge of the time change. So those come to play. It's 6 a.m. It's light out, and it can be light out at almost 11 o'clock at night. And so there is a lot of time to get out on the water. You feel like you're, living in Sweden up here sometimes. So you can kind of plan whether you want to fish in the morning or fish in the evening. But I'll let Chris kind of talk about the hatches and timing that a little bit.
So one thing Jason just mentioned, and it brings this to light, I guess. Our daylight, 5:30, 6 o'clock, it's light. And you are going, this one picture that you're looking right here, that's a buddy of mine, Matt from downstate actually. And that was around 10:30 at night, and the sun's almost gone. So what people can do, you could do a fishing trip where you fish the morning, do a full day, but you fish the morning, you go home, you relax, you bang around town, and then you go back for the evening. And that's still just a 1-day trip.
Yeah.
We've just divided it into 2 pieces. So what you have coming to June, by June, I typically am done chasing steelhead. I've got my fix. I'm good to go. And we are starting to head out. You've got at June, you're looking at the beginnings of the brown drake. You've got BWOs, you've got caddis, stoneflies are starting to show up, the tail end of the Hendricksons. So there's a lot of flies starting to come together for the dry fly enthusiast. When I go to the Escanaba, Jason has got me hooked on something in the last couple of years. I'm a dry fly guy, or I like to swing flies. Okay. And I swing for trout as well. I mean, I just love having a 2-hander in my hand, but Jason has shown me how to really dissect some pockets, and a lot of our waters are full of pockets. So high sticking like a number 8 chubby Chernobyl with a big stone under it. So a big dry fly that can still hold a big beadhead nymph through these pockets in broad daylight, middle of the afternoon, is just, you're out there when it doesn't make sense to catch a fish, and you're destroying them. I mean, you're just whacking big fish. But then coming into the evening, the hatches that explode, I kid you not, it can be an absolutely awesome time, and it can be an absolutely disheartening time. And what I mean by that, I have been on the river with big tented brown drakes floating down the river, fish. And when I say all over me, that's an understatement. You don't even know what way to turn, because it's bloop, bloop, bloop. It's one of the most incredible things you'll ever see. And throwing a drake pattern, I can't touch a fish. So I've come up with something that fixes that. It's called a brown drake with a size 18 Griffiths gnat about 2 feet behind it. I've got them now, but the river can be, it can show you so much greatness, and it can also be a humbling experience. So with that being said, the other thing that you have going on once you hit June is the topwater smallmouth action. And what's nicer than sitting in a boat and floating down a lazy river, and it's 75 degrees and you're in a t-shirt throwing to just monster slabs who just put the beef to the rod. You've got both of them. Once you hit June, you're a trout fisherman, you're a smallmouth fisherman. Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to lead with, before Jason started talking, one of the things that a lot of people think about when they think about the UP is brook trout fishing. I get a lot of people who want to brook trout fish, okay? Brook trout fishing up here typically is a march into a wilderness that is not friendly. I'll tell you a story. 3 guys came up. One guy didn't go at all. One guy stayed in for about 20 minutes, and one guy stayed in the entire time. The guy who stayed in the entire time had a blast. But the one gentleman who stayed in for about 20 minutes, he said, I'm not going to ruin my gear, punch holes in my waders. The brook trout fishing up here is absolutely phenomenal, but it's work. I've got spots, you go 4.5 hours and you've covered 200 yards, but the fishing is phenomenal. But you're waist deep in water. You're crawling on your hands and knees. You're hung up more than you're in the water.
Yeah.
But you want big, super aggressive, beautiful jewels. They are here. You just have to be willing to work for it, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I think to contrast that, we'll get into a little bit of the brookie fishing in a second with some photos. The Escanaba is this big, wide, shallow river with a hard granite bottom and maybe some cobbles that you kind of got to trip over every now and then. But overall, it is a very, very wadeable river. And you're able to kind of walk the bank and pick your spots. And it's a phenomenal. It's primarily walk and wade for us when we do it. We can float it. It depends a lot on what Mother Nature's dealt us, if we've got high enough flows. But honestly, if you really want to fish it and fish it well and enjoy it, it's you just get out there and you spend a day just kind of walking up and down the banks, wading some holes. It's phenomenal. And like Chris said, it has these dual natures. Out in the middle of the day, you can go out there with a chubby like that on the screen, which has been gnawed half to death, and you can get out there and get these trout going crazy for it. And then come evening, start to really work a hatch and just get schooled by these fish that get all of a sudden super selective. And it's fun. It challenges, but it also rewards you for getting out there and putting in a little bit of wading and walking time. The waters are different though too. We will tend to fish maybe the faster, more riffly water during the day, during the midday, and that probably helps. Those fish are a little bit more opportunistic. And then come evening, we'll get back down in that small, that slackier, calmer lake water, where the hatches really start to come off and those fish are really keying on surface activity. And it really creates kind of two very different scenarios for these fish. But it's a phenomenal fishery. We've got browns, we've got rainbows, and they get very, very big. There's a lot to eat in these rivers, not just bugs, but there's a phenomenal amount of crawfish and minnows and everything else in there. These fish get fed, and they put it on during the summertime. They really do.
And this year, it's worth mentioning, and we'll get to that, but the winter fishery is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is.
Is phenomenal as well. You definitely, and you cannot be afraid to visit the river at night. The nighttime fishing, this river is an around the clock, around the year fishery is a good way to put it. Right now it's froze up, but barring ice, it's an around the clock, around the year fishery.
Yeah.
Say, guys, a question came in about the snow melt, and I imagine this applies to kind of rain as well. I mean, do the rivers blow out much? Maybe the Escanaba in particular,
Yeah.
But springtime in particular, I mean, some of them get really high, but do they come back down quick enough, or what's the story there?
Our rivers change like you change your socks. We get a lot of popcorn thunderstorms. I mean, if you think about it, we're a big island, right? So I've got storms coming in off of Superior. I've got storms coming off the west. I can have storm come up from the south off of Lake Michigan, and they dump water, and you can literally go from 700 CFS, which most people on this river consider prime, to 1800 overnight, where most people won't touch it.
Yeah.
So our rivers rise very fast, but in the same breath, they calm down pretty quick, depending on, of course, how heavy the rain was. Now, a lot of our river systems, they're a lot bigger than you think. They cover a lot of territory.
Yeah.
So you could have no rain in Escanaba, right? But Marquette was pounded. Well, that's going to feed into this river system, and it's just going to raise it slower, but it's still coming. It's flowing downhill. So yes, the rain and the snowmelt. The snowmelt, not so much. We know what we're going to get when we start coming out of it. It can move it a little bit, but the rain, the thunderstorms move our waters much faster. And I've had to, as Jason was saying with the Escanaba, it's a super friendly river, plenty of fish, plenty of room to cast. It reminds you of something big out west.
Yeah.
It's just a pleasing river to spend time on, but it rises quick and it falls quick. And when it rises, You can see the picture right there in the lower right-hand side of the screen. Push out water up after a good thunderstorm about a foot, and you don't want to be out there.
Yeah, it moves. It moves. There's little to slow it down. It boogies through there. Yep.
Any other questions?
You mentioned fishing at night, and John Vansel asked, "What about mousing? Is that a thing?"
So that's a great question, and I would love to say I'm 100% in tune to it. And I don't know if John Schmidt is in this group yet, but you guys know John Schmidt, of course. He came up and he actually started doing it a little bit last year. And a very good friend of Jason and I is a guy by the name of Jim. He started doing it last year. So I'll tell you what, yes, there's opportunity. But can I speak intelligently at all about it? No.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, get with me at the end of this summer.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say, we used to be a bit more gung-ho about the nights out there. And I tell you what, you go out there at midnight with your little headlamp on after you've seen a black bear run across the river, you kind of like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be out here tonight. You're out in the wilderness, and it takes some. You got to want it. Let's just put it that way. You got to want it to go out and wade in that river at midnight or even later and working a pattern. But there's even hatches that come off after dark if you can stay out there 11, 12 o'clock, where you turn your headlight on and you just get a mouthful of bugs because it's so thick out there. There is a lot of activity at night out there, but you got to really want it to stay out there late like that.
You do. And like I said, to answer the question, yes, there are mousing opportunities. And if whoever asked that question would like an area to head into, I'll be glad to give it to him if he sends me a message. I know of a spot that there's a lot of mice in the timber, but again, you're in some thick woods. You're waiting, and when you look into the woods and there's stuff looking back at you,
Yeah.
it can raise the hair on your neck.
Yeah.
We have bears, we have wolves, cougars, coyotes. It's all up here.
You're back on the food chain up here, unfortunately. Yeah. All right. We talked a little bit about gearing up. You've been doing a lot of two-hand, some trout spay. I like to nymph. I'm going to really try some Euro, some tight lining this year, get more into that. I primarily like to just indicator and swing it through, but there's dry fly, you name it, you can do it on this river. It's big. There's plenty of opportunities. Bring the thing you like to do, and we'll help you adapt it. Just hit us up, and we'll definitely point you in the right direction.
And again, if you don't need a guide, just say, hey, send us a message. I'm going to this area. What's the water like? What kind of flies? We have absolutely no problem with helping an individual out who is willing to at least reach out and say, hey, can you help me?
Yep. As things start to warm up towards the back end of the summer, we like to give the Escanaba a little bit of a break and get back in the cooler, kind of spring-fed waters. And that's the time to go after brookies. But I tell you what, it's a bit more for the adventurous, and Chris will go into this. But wow, spectacular, and definitely what this area is known for. Definitely you get off the beaten path, and you have to kind of carve your own path a lot. And but the fish, they're gorgeous. The water's gorgeous. You're still in that kind of cedar swamp, tea-stained water. But it is a lot of fun. And he tries to drag me back in the woods a lot more. I've opted out after a few times, but I will get back in there, and I tell you what, it's a blast. There's nothing else like it.
Again, this is so as Jason said, you give the Escanaba a break. The negative to the Escanaba river, a lot of it is a tailwater fishery. So you have a dam feeding water, and the reservoir that feeds the lower portions, if you will, they're just not really that deep. So that water, if we've been really hot, will exceed 70, and 70 is about the cutoff point where you just say, I'm done. But with that being said, I've got plenty of tributary water that even in the hottest months is running at 48, 49, 50, 51 degrees. Now it's work. So if you look down, it's ironic you use this photo in the lower left-hand side of the screen. I thought that was shallow right there. I stepped into it and I was about waist deep in that black tar muck that smells really bad. That was in the blink of an eye. I have found myself in some sticky situations in these smaller streams, but I always tell people I'm never lost because I'm always wandering. The water is cold. It is healthy. It is a brook trout heaven. And the picture up in the right, ironically, was taken off of one of my favorite little brook trout streams. It's actually one of the bigger small streams that I fish. And that is my son, David, with a brown trout that absolutely blew my mind. They're very rare to see in that particular stream, but they exist. So here again, you don't know what you're going to hit. And you could be in a stream that, I kid you not, is 4 or 5 feet wide, and you're walking along knee deep. Next thing you know, it's over your head. But also in those deep pools are fish that you didn't think would come out of such a small area.
Yeah.
Again, it's a lot of work. And I've had people say they want that type of experience until they get in there. It's not lunch on the bank. It's going in there. It's covering a very small stretch of river, if you will, over a very long period. It's reapplying a lot of bug dope, but the reward when you're holding a brookie in your hand and you can't close your hand because he's so girthy and he struck that little caddis, you watched him working because we're very quiet in there, just hunting. We're hunting them. The rewards are awesome, and it gives you an opportunity to walk on water that very few people ever step on. I've got spots I've never seen a set of boot prints.
Yep.
But you gotta want it.
You gotta want it, and I've been back with you a few times, and you talk about that small water, neck down. You can't tell with this brown tea stained water. You can't tell how deep it is. Like I said, you've got visibility for about 3 feet maybe. And then it gets a little bit, all right, how deep is this? You lose that depth perception. And we came around a bend. I was in the lead, and I took a step of what I thought was 3 foot deep. And he looked down at me, and all he saw was a hat floating in the water.
He was gone.
I was gone. I came up, backstroke to the side. And I was like, well, that's a little deeper than I thought. And I got over the bank, and it wasn't the falling in the water or swimming out. That was fine. It washed all the bug dope off me. And I got out to the bank, and it was like the mosquitoes were waiting for me. Whew, I still remember just getting eaten. But wow, pretty water. It's still like some of that is pictures that we're using here. Just spectacular water.
Hey, so for some of that smaller water, the brook trout, what kind of rods are you using? Or there it is on the screen.
So my favorite rod, I use a 7.5 foot 3-weight with just a wake forward or a double taper line, or they've got some new specialty lines out that Rio produces them, if I can name drop, but they do a creek line. But fishing those 90% roll casting. And here's what a lot of people, I've met a lot of people over the years that weren't familiar with what I do, but I read a book many years ago. It was called Small Stream Techniques. Okay. I get in the water. I move when I get in the water very slow. And I do my absolute favorite way to fish these. And it's with a fly. that we all know. So there's nothing fancy here. It's a natural colored zonker with a copper belly. Okay. Nothing special. It's about that long. It's a size 8. And I put on about an 8-foot leader down to about 3X, 4X. And I roll it down. It hits the water. And I just start moving the rod tip to pull the fly back and forth from all the tag auders and the down trees. I'll strip it and move it back and forth. And I kid you not, you just chuckle inside because the fish, I've heard people say brook trout were, naive. That is just one ultra aggressive fish who gets a very small window to feed and to bask in some of the greatness before it's all frozen again.
Yeah.
They're aggressive. They hit with lightning speed, and you've got a fish that could be only ounces and has the ferocity of a pit bull. I mean, it's just amazing. Now, for the guy who wants to stay pure, if you will, and just throw dry flies, that opportunity is there, but you have to pick and choose when you can find a clearing and such, because I kid you not, you'll be walking along and the next thing you know, you're holding your waders and you're bent over staring at the water to get through a tunnel of alders. Mm-hmm. It can be brutal, but 7.5 foot 3-weight and you'll hook fish, I kid you not, that just destroy a 3-weight.
Yep. You got to go short. You got to go short rod. Those tag alders are brutal. All right, let's move on through the season a little bit. Start to transition towards the fall. Obviously, it's brown trout time. You guys, most of us on here, man, we know the beautiful colors Michigan can produce both in the leaves and the fish, and it's phenomenal up here. We really hit it this year, though. I think we got that warm snap come through in November, where it was 60 degrees out on the water. The fish were just dynamite and active on the Escanaba, and we just had a blast as these fish really put on the feed before the winter. Awesome, like primarily just getting out there and nymphing. And you love the streamer, you can get out there and throw the big stuff. We did a lot with stoneflies and pheasant tail nymphs. Just if we weren't getting hits, we would just change up the sizes a little bit until we got the fish dialed back in. But patterns, I think there were only 2 or 3 different patterns that we used. It was just all about size. And you talked about colors. Brown. I mean, these fish are just keyed in brown, that darker water, they're just all over it. So it's just really getting the profile and the size right. And when you do, they respond really, really well. We this year had the fortune to hit that nice brook trout that you see down in the bottom right. And whenever I'm fishing with him and he hears me say, "Chris, you got to come see this. I can't believe it." He knows there's a big brook trout sitting in the net. We've caught some big coasters, and we caught that one this year. And just what a spectacular fish to see that in our water there. Holy cow!
And that's not a coaster, just so you know.
No,
that is just a Goliath. That's just. I look at that now and I still just shake my head. The fall fishing is absolutely dynamic. Come late August, and again, it just shows what opportunity you have. But come late August, early September into October, November, trout fishing, steelhead fishing. If you want to go swing or strip streamers or drag the bottom for kings, for cohos, if it's a pink gear, a pink salmon, our lake run brown fishery, the big Goliaths that come in from the lake. Again, you have all of this opportunity wrapped up into one area, and within, at the max, an hour, you can be doing whatever you want to do. So it's close to us. The dynamics of the river systems are just absolutely awesome. And you can, as these three guys, as an example, they came up, we steelhead fished, we went steelhead fishing, they caught some steelhead. We went trout fishing, they caught trout. We can do whatever you desire. You want to go float? If we have water, we're going to go float. If you want to wade, then we're going to go wade. We can offer whatever you'd like at basically any time of the year. There's always one overlapping another.
There is.
So the diversity is always going to be there for you to come up and say, I want to do this today, or I want a full day, but I want to go in the morning and then I want to go in the afternoon. However you want to tailor it, we'll make it work. And you've always got choice.
Options. Yeah.
Options.
Yep.
For the do-it-yourself angler, we had a guy ask about boats, anything from a jet sled to a kayak. And I guess it's going to depend on the water, of course. But if you're going to be in the UP for a week, you want to bring a boat along or two, what would be your recommendations?
Kayaks, definitely.
Yeah.
But again, if you're coming up, give us a holler. I'll tell you what's going on, because our rivers, again, rise and fall pretty quick. But Jason, so we have kayak for sure. We have a 14-foot raft pontoon, 3-man. And we have a 14-foot stealthcraft ransom with a 6-horse on it. So we use all three. All three can be used. Well, I don't use the kayaks anymore. It just I'm not young enough to do it anymore. My kids still do it nonstop.
Yeah.
But whether it's a raft is probably going to be
the pontoon or the raft is probably your most versatile.
Ideal. If you have a raft or a tune, that is going to be ideal, because you're going to be able to get into, regardless of the time of year, just about anything. My pontoon, as an example, it's about 16 feet, 15 feet tip to tip, 3-man, but you can row it in, 6 inches of water and fish out of it, and that's with a 50-pound anchor on the back and such. We call it the big taxi cab, because it's not as movable, or it's not as friendly as a drift boat, but it gets the job done. So if you're going to come up and you want to bring a boat up, again, give us a holler. And if you're going to be in a region that I am dialed into, I will gladly tell you what's going on. Otherwise, look at the USGS, the U.S. Geological Surveying sites. Type the river system in that you're going to be by. It'll show you flow rates.
Yep. So we kind of covered a lot of the gearing up. I mean, it's the fun time of year where you can probably pull out the heavier gear, go for some streamers, or you can even do the 2-handers. We get lake run browns around here as well in the tributaries. Little trickier to time, but that's an option as well. But it's just such a fun time to get out on the Escanaba and go after the browns out there that, if we pick up a lake run brown over on the tribs, it's a bonus, it's a plus. Usually it's when we're trying to get into steelhead season and pick up a few fish before the water freezes. But that's kind of our go-to in terms of gear is, your typical like streamers, but we'll also nymph and work those big stoneflies and egg patterns, things like that. Dave, how are we doing on questions? Any others before we
sure. There's a couple that we haven't quite gotten to yet. You mentioned some hopper dropper kind of fishing, I think, in the August and October sort of, pheasant tails on the end of there, or
I think what we're
sort of
finding
nymphing that works with that.
Yeah, for the hopper dropper on the Escanaba, for nymphing, I will start with a larger stonefly pattern, brown stonefly. I go for the heaviest I can get. So like a double bead, really heavy. I want that thing down on the bottom, touching. Size 8 to 10. I mean, I will use a chunky bug. I think it does a couple things. One, I mean, we do have stoneflies. We don't have a lot of stoneflies, but these fish tend to key on this big brown nymph pattern. We do have a lot of crayfish. I think it it simulates a lot of different stuff in the water. And for whatever the reason, these fish just key on it. I've had a hard time beating this pattern, but when they don't want it, they don't want it. And I will switch to pheasant tails, and I'll start to dial down my sizes, and I'll use those pheasant tails to get in the size 12, size 14 range to see if that's more what they're after. And you'll know real soon whether you're in the right ballpark with your size or not. And that's really what I do. It's more varying size than anything else for me when it comes to a dropper.
I also personally like the prints. I just
Yeah.
like print snips. The one thing that Jason will do, he is a searcher, and he'll fish a fly for 5 minutes and change. He's that quick. He knows, well, in this hole, I've caught many fish. I'm not catching something now. I know the fish are here. It's me, not them. I'll stick to the fly and just beat it to death. He'll change out so fast, so quick until he says, yep. And then like the movie A River Runs Through It, where Brad Pitt looks at his brother. What are they biting on? Well, that's me looking at him when we're fishing that style. He'll just go a lot quicker he'll stay in the same piece of water, pick it apart, not catch anything and know, okay, it's me, it's not the fish.
Yeah.
He'll turn it over, go from that big cinder block stonefly that he likes to throw down to a size 14 hare's ear or something. There it is. And the fish are back on. So, and we do a lot of hopper dropper style fishing, a lot. I've always been a 2-fly guy, whether it's 2 dry flies or what the case may be. If I'm not ripping a streamer or swinging a fly, 2 flies are always it. And like I said, he's really in the last year or so sucked me into this big chubby Chernobyl rubber leg stimulator, something, about as big as your fist, with a big offering underneath. Again, he was saying this brown stone. Well, again, water's Tannis, and this stone fly is big. It's big and chunky. And with all the big crayfish and everything that are swimming around, so not only the stone flies themselves, but the bug life or the crayfish life that's in there, it's just, it's awesome.
I say that the asterisk on this is daytime fishing. This is like 10 to 3 during the day, bright sunlight, faster water. They're going to respond to this, but I have learned with these fish, I don't know if it's because we've got eagles and predatory birds, but these fish are holding in the lower water column. And when I do a hopper dropper, I'm not doing a little foot dropper. I'm doing maybe a 3-foot dropper. I'm getting that bug down deeper. And even when I'm nymphing, I'm always making sure I'm down deep. They're down there hunkered down on the bottom pretty good. And I think it's partially because they're finding security down there.
He's the one who showed me. You would have never caught me on the river at 1 o'clock in the afternoon with a bluebird sky. It just doesn't make sense to me. Fish do not bite at that time. They just don't.
There's no hatches, no nothing going on.
Not in this big, wide open river. I mean, I'm not fishing under log jams and stuff. There's this monster river and it's bluebird sky. Fish don't bite at that time. And he'd go out, 9, 13, 8, and start shooting me pictures. He's the one who, here's the guy being educated by the client/friend, now guide, that look, you need to dial in on this. And here we are, beautiful sunny afternoon, and going out and smoking fish.
Yeah.
So again, not only is it a year-round fishery, but it's a 24-hour-a-day fishery.
Yeah.
As the guy said, he asked about mousing. Yes, it's an opportunity. You got great dry fly fishing. You've got streamer fishing. You've got swung fly fishing. You've got hopper dropper fishing at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. It doesn't end. You just have to say, hey guys, I want to come up and this is what I want to do.
Yeah. How's the early morning go?
It's
happening then, or
to me, it's a beautiful time to be out on the water. I think for one reason, and that is when all the wildlife is on the move out there. So if you get out there at 7 in the morning, you're going to see all the wildlife in the area. For me, the fishing, I haven't really dialed in that early morning. I think that's what I'm going to experiment more with this year. It tends to be for me in the afternoon, 10 a.m. on. But I haven't had as much luck.
It's for myself, you're getting the tail ends of very late evening spinnerfalls.
Mm-hmm.
So you've still got some decent dry fly action, but morning is also, because you have to remember these fish have fed and rested overnight. They haven't been pressured. They haven't been beat on. Morning time is a great time to go grab a 6-weight, a sinking line, and a size 2 D&D in yellow, and just go out there and smash one of those ultra aggressive fish.
Yeah.
So dry fly fishing is good in the morning, especially if you're catching middle of June brown dray catch. Well, there's so many of them, it's rolling into the morning from the spinner fall from the night before, draining this massive system, right? So you've got that going on. And then to take that, I always carry 2 rods. Take that and then take a streamer rod and start pounding the banks and pounding the pools.
Yeah.
So morning time, whatever time you want, it'll work.
Yeah. So there's a couple questions lingering out there about the Escanaba in particular, really related to, kind of fishing it yourself, taking a boat down there. Someone asks, is there a car spotting service in Escanaba? There's, they're all over the lower Michigan. If you're going to the PM or Muskegon or wherever, they're all over. But what do you do there?
And again, I have children. He and I, if he's running a trip I can spot, we make it work. And I'm sure after this is over, somebody's gonna give us a little heat about even mentioning this river, but it's okay.
It's out there.
It's if you give us a call and you need a car spot, we're up there we're on that river all the time, with many others. Again, you give us a call and say, hey, I'm going to be in this area. We can make anything work. There's nothing really that can't work if you reach out. But to give you the phone number of a guy on the Escanaba River, in the section that we like to fish, there isn't car spotting. Now, if you're going to come up and I'm just going to go away from what I was talking about, there are certain rivers that do have some car spotting. And if somebody's interested in it, send me a message and we'll talk privately.
Yeah.
There is some car spotting.
Are there any canoe liveries around the Escanaba area that, do trips and stuff?
You know what? There at this moment, no. 2 years ago, somebody wanted to change the right of the river or run of the river flow to handle a canoeing business, if you will, and that was shot down. So no, there isn't any canoe liveries, no, to my knowledge, no canoe rentals.
Not that I'm aware, but there are kayak and canoe rentals down on the lake. And so you might try those guys to see if they would set you up with something maybe on the Esky. Who knows? But I think there are 1 or 2 rentals that you might reach out to in town.
In Escanaba and Gladstone. And again, if whoever's asking that particular question would shoot me a message, give me a text or something, because I'm sure somewhere in here my phone number is. I'll talk about some other stuff that I'm just not going to throw out there.
Yep.
A couple others. I don't know. Let me ask you this before it looks like you're at December, so you're gonna.
Yeah, we're wrapping up.
This will be a short what you've got prepped.
Yep.
Yeah. Why don't you guys go ahead and do December, and then I'll.
All right. We'll
circle back with
this
you.
Pretty quick. It's this isn't going to be a popular time of year to come fish, but I'm going to throw it out there. When we do have weather that cooperates a little bit and doesn't freeze us out too badly, honestly, I think winter is becoming my favorite time of year. It is not easy. You got to want it to be able to get out in the cold, but I'm sure there's a lot of folks in the audience that are getting out there and doing it. I find that it's it's the best time of year to get out there and go after those big fish that refused you, broke you off, tore you up during the summertime. They're more docile, they're hungry, and you actually stand a chance of fighting them and winning them and getting them in. Pretty similar tactics. The water, it gets clear and it gets lower. So kind of down a size in leader and tippet, going down to maybe 4 or 5X. Again, these fish aren't leader shy, so it's not like we're out west going to 5X or 6X. We're 4X, and that'll be fine. Probably fluoro and just nymphing slow, nymphing deep, and working those deeper spots. It can be an incredibly productive time of year, but you're only going to be out there for a couple hours, and you're fishing in for a few hours and then get home and warm up, because it gets to be a little brutal.
We even, if you look at our website, the wintertime trips, we cut to 4 hours.
Yeah.
For me to go beyond 4 hours anymore, and I kid you not, it gets painful. It hurts. It can get so brutal. I mean, I've been fishing up here for 21 years, and I've gotten off of rivers when I could not. It felt like I was walking on nubs from my knees down. And to drag somebody through that, it goes from being fun to being miserable.
Mm-hmm.
We do at that time 4-hour trips. You do a half-day trip and you call it good. If by chance the weather broke and you can get some heat on you, I'll stay out there later. But that's a base by base or trip by trip thing that you really have to look at. But the fishing, oh my gosh, you look at the picture over in the left, the day Jason and I went out on that day, it was one of my sons, Jason, myself, and Jim. It was so beautiful, and the snow was just big, fat, fluffy snow, and not a breeze on the water. And we just pounded fish, and we stayed out there for longer than 4 hours.
Yeah.
So that's an exception, but there's just some phenomenal fishing to do up here. And I really want to say, for the guy who wants to get out and see beauty,
this is it. Yeah.
The trout fishing is the ticket. If you can put away, I know in the wintertime, a lot of us tend to focus on, okay, it's steelhead time. It's steelhead time. If you can put that away for a second, as you can see in the third picture over, we have the opportunity to catch trout that look like steelhead.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. There are some animals in these waters, and we have a select few that are managed as blue ribbon fisheries, and they don't have a shutdown time. They have a catch and kill time for that person that runs during regular trout season. But after that, it's 100% catch and release. And you can look, I mean, there's a rainbow there that is, if you didn't know any better, if they said they were on a steelhead stream, that's what you think it is.
Yeah.
So they exist, and the fishing is phenomenal.
It really is. I think what we've learned, or at least I've kind of learned my lesson this year, because we had the opportunity with the weather, was picking out the warmest days. And again, if you've got the flexibility in your schedule, what I'm doing is I'm looking on Weather Underground and I'm watching the 10-day forecast, and I'm looking for the warmest day in that 10-day forecast. I'm looking for that spike, and that one day where it starts to warm up, these fish are on. And so just it can be really kind of weather driven. You can get out there on a mediocre weather day and still do pretty well, but if there's a little bit of warmth, that's true for any winter fishing, it's going to help your odds, and it's going to make your day that much better.
All right. Hey, so there's a few other questions that are kind of rolling in. And I think one we touched on earlier about, smaller midges, Tannic water. That's maybe not the best of combinations, it seems like. going small is maybe not the most productive way to go.
I'll tell you what, sometimes it's the only way to go. And I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, at one particular experience, and it's where I learned this. I was sitting fishing one night, brown drake hatch in full force. I mean, they're just falling out of the sky. And you're seeing these size 10 tents floating down the river. There's fish everywhere. And I don't care what drake pattern I threw on, I couldn't catch a fish. A guy I know gave me a little tip, and I went to a size 18 Griffiths gnat. They were refusing every single drake, like gobbling up that size 18. I can't even see size 18 anymore, for goodness gracious.
Yeah.
So, and I'm being 100% truthful. I can't see it. So I will now take, as an example, a drake, and I'll run that 2.5 feet off. At least I have a spot to focus my eyes on.
Yeah.
And so, you know what? You want to go small? We have absolutely small BWOs. We have tricos, gnats, small caddis, the little
small caddis,
the little black caddis. We have that. I fish that. I catch fish that way.
Yeah.
But now, because I can't see it, I'll run a big lead fly on the front of it, like a big chubby, a big stimulator. If the drakes are coming off, I'll put a big McNeely's drake on the front and a little Griffiths gnat. I'll go down to a size 16, size 18 rusty spinner when the spinner fall is coming off. Put a big spinner on the front and a little tiny sulfur spinner on the back. Small flies do work. And in some of the brook trout streams, really small flies work because those little brookies, they're just dialed in.
So let's talk the opposite way. What about hex? What about big bugs? Any of that going on behind, like some of those impoundments and slower water? And you see some of that once in a while?
Yeah, they exist.
Not asking for secrets, just
there are hex
asking for a
hatches.
friend.
There are hex hatches up here, yes.
Yep. We might even get cicada this year, right?
Yeah, cicada is even a possibility because of the year.
Right.
So
see what happens.
So yes, there's hex. Our big hatch up here, for all practical purposes, is what most people are familiar with, and what draws the most attention to us is our brown drake hatch. We don't get the hatches of the Lower Peninsula in some of your ultra famous rivers that get blanket hex hatches where you can walk on them. We don't have that, but yes, we have some rivers up here with some very large fish that do get hex. Yes, and my phone number's right there.
You know what? I got a question for the group though. Hit us up if you know damselflies. Man, we get a monster damselfly hatch, and it just brings every single brown in the river jumping, going crazy, and we get that for a couple weeks, and I'm not figuring it out. I've tried a lot of different patterns. It's a hard one, but those fish just get keyed in. We've got a massive damselfly population.
And truthfully, if you are super keyed in on that and you have a lot of experience,
hit us. Come on up and fish for free. That'd be worth
show
it.
us, because that's something that we're just not
It
dialed in.
would be a blast. The way those fish are going off, it would be a blast.
Yeah. All right. So we weren't gonna get really detailed on like exactly what river and all this, but there are a couple of questions, and we're not gonna maybe hotspot anything too much. One is, if someone wants to go and do a 2 to 3 day float trip, they're going to pack all their stuff in a boat. Are any rivers up there really conducive to that sort of a trip?
Yep.
What would be some of those that someone could target?
Give me a call.
Give a call. All right.
Yeah,
So they exist.
Give me a call, yes. And I'll tell you what, I met a gentleman who was on a 5 or 6 day trip. He still hadn't gotten out of the water yet, and he was writing a book. And he was floating a particular system. Yes, it can be done. The one thing I want to stress is safety. You can go, so I don't want to be the downer, okay? But a couple years back, we were talking about rainwaters and such and how quick they rise and fall. A young lady lost her life on the Escanaba in a canoe. So they thought thunderstorm just went through, water levels were low, water level shot up, we're going to go out. Somebody died. So safety, I really want to preach that. Another river that we fish many years ago, a young man that chums around with one of my sons, his uncle lost his life canoeing on a totally separate system. It happens, and they go up quick, lightning speed. So whoever wants to take the trip, there's my number. I'll gladly give you the info and the areas to do it in, but safety is super key.
Yep.
Right. One other one, we've talked a lot about trout, smallmouth. Didn't talk much about muskies. And that could be a whole thing unto itself. You don't have all night, so
that could be a whole thing to itself. And I'll tell you what, I would tell you to give Brad Petsky a call of Rivers North. I don't fish them. I haven't gotten into that yet. It's, as all of us know, the more you invite into your arsenal and you add another species, you are peeling off in an entirely different direction again. I don't have enough time for my clients, for myself and my family to chase smallmouth, trout, and steelhead. Okay, and so to go into muskie, I've got a bunch of buddies. Why don't you do it? Why don't you do it? I don't have time. I got the gear.
Yeah.
I don't have time because I only know how to do things one way. I'm going to chase trout. We're full throttle, and I'm focused on that. If I'm bored, I'll run down to the lake and throw some big stupid stuff for pike. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to get a reaction. I don't know enough about it, and I believe Brad Petsky has gotten into the warm water stuff. I'd send you there. I don't know enough about it. Yes, there's a ton of opportunity for it, and a lot of people do it.
Yeah.
That's what I can tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Another day. And we had Brad Petsky join us last year, and he did talk a lot about the muskies, and it was pretty cool.
Yep, that's his.
Definitely worth calling to get a quick
Yeah, absolutely. Give him. I know he's become quite a fan of the warm water stuff, and the only warm water thing that we have graduated to that's a blast is the smallmouth fishing, and that's been within the last 5 years that we just really started hitting that. I guess we just didn't realize how great it was and how much we had to offer right in our backyard. We were always going 2 hours this way, an hour this way, 3 hours this way. And I discovered it through one of my sons. He was like, "Dad, you don't just have to fish for trout. Grab that fly rod, come with me."
Yeah.
And that's where it started.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy smokes. Any other questions?
I don't see any others that we haven't kind of addressed throughout without recapping stuff we've already talked about. But I'll give an opportunity to kind of if people want to unmute them. Well, here's a question as soon as I say it. Smallmouth fishing. Are you doing it July through August? Because that seems to be a good time for smallmouth, but you guys were talking brookies then.
Yeah, it's smallmouth fishing. So if I skipped over that or Jason skipped over it, I apologize. That is an absolute awesome time to get into. You could still go subsurface, but July and August,
Poppers.
man, you throw on a Zud bubbler and rip that thing through the surface. Woo! Hang on, because it's a rodeo.
Yeah. All right. And I've seen brook trout fishing in the fall can be quite a thing. Is that doable?
I'll tell you what, here's my
Exactly.
take on brook trout fishing, and it just, it helps me to talk about things I forgot about. Our streams are so cold up here in the beginning part of trout season. There's a lot of brook trout streams that I fish. I don't like going into them until July. So they warm up a little bit. I mean, I've got a stream, you go into it in May, I think the fish are still hibernated. They're still frozen under the banks and the undercuts, I swear. But July, August, September, you've got some heat in those frigid streams. That's what we talk about, getting off of the Escanaba when it hits 70, and transitioning over at that time into these brook trout streams.
Yeah.
They're warm enough to tolerate. I mean, you go in there wet wading in July and it still turns your skin blue.
Yeah.
So yes, July, August, September. I don't have any brook trout streams that he and I fish that have an extended season. They shut down when the trout season shuts down. But yes, it is absolutely, a lot of guys, I have a lot of buddies who will come up here and they'll go bird hunting and do, what do they call, fins and feathers. So they'll go bird hunting, take their dogs out, and then, go fly fishing for some brook trout.
Yeah, good times. All right. Well, I think that's it, that we can see, unless anybody else throws anything through. If folks want to unmute themselves and say a few kind words, that's good. Now is a good time to do that. I think you are all able to unmute yourselves.
Or ask any questions you want. You out there, John Schmidt?
Yeah.
Hey, do you guys do the fence at all?
Yeah. and again, I just don't want to.
Understood.
Yeah, I don't want to name any. I don't want to name anything. So yes.
Call you, right?
I promise you. You give me or Jason a phone call. I get so much through social media, people saying, "Hey, I'm going to be in the area. What's going on?" If you make enough effort to just reach out, I don't have a problem with it. The one thing I say to everybody, I get the hero shots. I take them. I love fish pictures. I have so many friends out there that under normal circumstances, I may not be friends with just because I love the fish pictures. I get it. But if I give you something and you come up here, don't put the GPS coordinates on Facebook for me, please.
Guys, there's a question from someone about wanting how far of a range do you go from Escanaba? How far will you travel to guide somebody?
I've got, I will go literally 2 hours.
But that's rare.
That's
rare.
It's very rare.
It is doable. I would say 90% of our fishing's within an hour.
A couple people will ask. So the Upper Peninsula has a mystique to it, and maybe because we live here, we forget about how many people want to be part of the UP experience. We live here. This is where we live. It's where we work. We're out in it every day. Maybe we forget how special it may be to somebody else. There are a couple of streams that are in certain books, and people want to have that to be part of their experience. And I can go to certain places, yes.
Do you have any streams with old growth timber?
Yes. Yeah, it's a lot of my smaller streams. That's what they are.
Okay.
You've got streams that, I don't know, 100 years ago or 75 years ago were actually used as logging runs, and you'll see the logs still around the rivers, if you will. So there's some super old stuff. There's some stuff up here that you step back in time in.
talk to me about the black fly season you have up there. Was it normally about 10 days, 2 weeks, and it varies a little bit when it hits?
I'll tell you what.
I'm a veteran of travel and staying in the UP, so I've experienced a couple dozen horror stories of black flies.
Those things hurt you, and I kid you not, you bleed. You literally bleed like you were just pricked. I have found a Scientific Anglers SA makes a bug dope. It's a green can with a yellow cap. It melts plastic. I've gotten it on fly boxes, and you see that wormy look through the plastic. It melts plastic, but nothing bites you. Now, are you going to be part of a civil lawsuit for $100 billion, whoever used this 10 years ago? Yeah, you might be. Yeah. But I guarantee you the black flies don't bite. I'll tell you what, it's a must. You got to bring bug dope with you. I don't care where you're going up here. If you don't bring bug dope, your trip will be ruined. If you can tolerate.
Well.
What's that?
I have a head tent that works well.
Yep. Works. I don't like anything in my face, so I don't wear them, but I spray down with that stuff. And now using the sport sprays, so you don't sweat and your eyes start burning and everything else. But yeah, you know what? Long sleeve shirts, bug tents, hats. Yeah. If there is a bare piece of skin on you, it will get bit. Mosquitoes are much more tolerable. The black flies, they hurt, man. I mean, they hurt. Yeah. And they will drive you off a river. It's that miserable. It can be.
Now, tell what time, do you have a pretty set time of the year where they'll hit you up there?
Yeah, June-ish, late June-ish into July, and then they start to taper off. So there's a 3-week to 4-week window. Yeah. Where
between the window when school gets out and the 4th of July hits.
that's pretty accurate. I mean, that's pretty accurate of it. But again, I don't want to take away, the mosquitoes will ruin you as well. They will. The black flies are absolutely the worst, but the mosquitoes will ruin things too. If you actually, I did a TV show, 10 years ago now, and it was What Is It About Brookies? It's on YouTube still. You look in the camera lens, he's shooting, and he's this far away from me, and you could just see swarms. It was bad. That's how bad it was. So the black flies are worse, yes, but you can't come up here and not have bug dope.
Tent, whatever. And there's ticks. I mean, let us not forget the ticks. So the deer ticks, they're gonna get you too, and towards the end of May, June, July.
So you guys talk about fishing the UP in a t-shirt, and I've never experienced that in my lifetime.
It's the only way I fish.
Yeah.
I am in a t-shirt nonstop. And it can be done. And again, that bug spray that I use is awesome. Yeah. Again, I don't know if I'm going to be part of a lawsuit 10 years, like I said, but it does work. And
it melts your waders.
It does.
But my hat, my hair, in my ears, I don't leave anything uncovered because it could be that bad.
Yeah.
So if it floats with you, do you provide bug dope too?
I always have bug dope on me. It's a guarantee. It is a guarantee that if I forgot my bug dope, don't worry about it.
Do I have to sign a waiver of liability before you?
Right. I want you to bring it with you, but I guarantee you, I may forget something to flip a burger, or I may forget wading boots. I've done that, but I don't forget bug dope because I keep so many stinking cans of it. It's like cheater glasses. Bug dope is the same thing. In my car, in my pack, in my wader boots. You got to have it.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I really appreciate this presentation. It was really well done.
Yeah, hey, it was
Really
fun to do it. Yeah, our pleasure.
And
thank you, guys.
And this will be recorded, so we'll get it in your hands too, so you can push it out to any avenues you wish. I do know that we had people, I think we had some people from different states viewing. So I
Okay.
think it was a pretty good crowd tonight.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And again, for everybody who's online, we're going to do this again on March 16th with Chris Wood from Trout Unlimited. He won't be talking fish porn, but it should be a good conversation. Chris always puts on a good show. So thank you very much for coming tonight, guys.
Hey,
Appreciate everybody that participated tonight. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
thank you
Thank you
guys
all.
very much.
Appreciate
Excellent
it.
information. Thank you.
you.
All right. Enjoy the fishing season.